He found the SUV half buried in the snow, a lone shadow in a world drowned in white. No tire tracks, no voices, no movement, just silence. Heavy, unnatural, the kind that makes a man feel he isn't alone. Ethan stepped closer, boots sinking deep with every breath of the storm. He'd seen war. He'd seen death. But nothing prepared him for this kind of stillness. Inside, two parents sat frozen in final surrender, hands still reaching for a life they couldn't save. Ethan removed his glove, pressed a hand against the window, and the world held its breath. Then he heard it, a soft whimper, a tiny breath, a child's fragile fight against the cold. And in that moment, he wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was the only miracle she had left. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. Snow fell in thick white sheets across the lonely mountains of Silver Pine, Montana, burying silence beneath its frozen breath. Ethan Cole had always moved like a shadow through these woods, quiet, controlled, and with the rigid stillness of a man who had once lived by the trigger of a rifle. He was 39, broad-shouldered, tall, and carved from cold discipline. His face bore a short, coarse beard peppered with silver and a scar cut across his left eyebrow, a reminder of a mission gone wrong in Afghanistan when he'd shielded a teammate from shrapnel. His dark hair was trimmed military short, his posture straight even in solitude. Years of covert missions had made him distrust comfort, and heartbreak had taught him to distrust fate. Behind his austere exterior lived a man who carried guilt like armor, emotions locked away like weapons no longer allowed to fire. Beside him trotted Valor, a 6-year-old German shepherd with sable fur and intelligent amber eyes that always scanned the horizon. Muscular, disciplined, ears high, Valor bore his own scars, one across his flank from a roadside bomb and another along his snout. He had served as a military working dog, fiercely loyal and quick to act. Now he was Ethan's constant shadow, his only confidant in a world that had become too loud and painful to face. Valor was gentle with children, guarded with strangers, and restless when danger approached, traits that had once earned him medals but now only earned him silence in the snow. Tonight, the world shrieked. Wind whipped through pine branches like wolves baying in the dark, and snowflakes stung skin like ice shrapnel. Ethan nudged Valor forward, breath fogging in the freezing air. This was routine. Night patrols to calm his restless mind, to avoid the emptiness of sleep where ghosts visited. The stillness of untouched snow always gave him a twisted comfort. It demanded nothing from him, and he had nothing left to give. Then a faint flicker disturbed the night, a pulsing light, weak and fading, trembling somewhere ahead through the storm. Ethan's jaw tightened. Danger or distress? Valor's ears shot forward, body tense. A low growl rumbled in the dog's chest, not of aggression but alertness. Ethan trusted that instinct more than he trusted his own heartbeat. They moved through waist-deep snow toward the glow. The shape emerged slowly. A black SUV, overturned, one wheel still spinning in stubborn motion. The windshield was shattered, glass scattered like frozen tears. Metallic groans echoed beneath the howling wind, the car's frame twisting under the weight of snow and fate. Even from outside, Ethan felt the cold of death. He crouched, lantern beam cutting through white darkness. Two figures in the front seats, a man and a woman, both late 30s perhaps, maybe travelers. Their clothes suggested city folk. The woman's manicured hand still clutched a scarf. The man wore a wedding band that gleamed faintly. Their faces, pale, eyes closed, skin touched blue by the storm's cruelty. Whatever dreams they'd chased had ended here, in a silent grave of ice. Ethan removed his glove, placed calloused fingers gently on the woman's wrist. Still. He whispered something he hadn't spoken in years, a prayer, crooked and rusted, but spoken all the same. Valor whined sharply from the back door, pawing frantically. Ethan turned, adrenaline rising. He yanked the rear door open. Under a partially inflated airbag, wrapped in a pastel blanket soaked by melted snow, lay a little girl, no more than 6, pale skin, trembling lips, wide brown eyes too frozen for tears. Thick dark hair matted against her forehead. Tiny fingers clutched a worn stuffed rabbit whose ear was torn, as if it had fought the world beside her. Her breathing was shallow, her gaze empty. Not crying, too exhausted even for fear. Valor crawled halfway into the back seat, nose nudging the child. He licked her cheek, tail low but steady, a soldier assessing the fallen. The girl's lips parted. A ghost of breath fogged the air. Ethan's pulse kicked. Survival, a flicker of life in this graveyard of snow. "Easy, sweetheart," he murmured. His voice was soft, unfamiliar even to him. He wrapped his thick tactical jacket around her small frame, lifting her gently. She weighed nothing, light like a memory, fragile like a promise. She blinked once, gaze trying to find something to trust. Ethan held her close to his warmth. "You're safe now," he whispered, uncertain who he was trying to convince, her or himself. "I won't let the world take you too." He climbed into his truck, cradling her in one arm. Valor leaped into the back but repositioned himself beside the girl, pressing his body against her for warmth, ears pricked, nose pressed to her hand. Snow hammered the windshield. The road disappeared into a white void, but turning back had never been an option for him, not in war, not now. Ethan tightened his grip on the wheel. The engine roared to life. As they pulled away, a distant wolf howled. The wreck faded into darkness, snow swallowing it whole. Ethan glanced at the girl. Her lashes trembled, her small hand curled weakly into Valor's fur. Something in his chest, long dormant and brittle, shifted, cracked, breathed. He didn't know her name, didn't know who she had lost or what nightmares chased her, but she was alive, and as long as life clung to her, so would he. The storm raged harder, wind screamed, yet inside the cab a fragile warmth sparked between soldier, child, and dog. Ethan whispered again, more vow than comfort. "You're not alone. Not anymore." The girl's eyelids fluttered. A tear finally thawed and slid down her frozen cheek. Somewhere behind them, in the blizzard's roar, another cry echoed. Not animal, not wind, something else moving in the darkness. Ethan stiffened, fingers tightening on the wheel. Valor lifted his head, ears tilted backward, a low growl rumbling like a storm warning. And in that split second, Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The cabin welcomed them not with comfort, but with stillness so cold it bit the lungs. Ethan kicked the door shut with his boot, snow scattering across the wooden floor, and the storm's roar faded into a muffled growl behind thick logs. The air inside was sharp, untouched, and bitter, like a room that had forgotten warmth existed. Ethan moved with quiet urgency, his breath clouding in the freezing space as he laid the child carefully on an old leather couch, its dark surface cracked and worn like his own memory. He stripped off his gloves and coat, revealing a long-sleeved thermal shirt stretched across a frame cut by years of discipline. His hands were large, rough, nicked by old blade marks and burns from distant places. Hands that once broke down enemy doors now trembled slightly as he pressed 2 fingers to the girl's neck, searching. Pulse, faint but present, her skin was icy, lips the color of bruised petals. The stuffed rabbit in her arms looked as battered as she did. One eye missing, fabric rubbed thin by love or fear. Valor sat beside the couch, tail swept slow but steady against the floor, brown gold gaze fixed on the child as if waiting for orders that never had to be spoken. The shepherd leaned in, pressing his warm body alongside her small form, chin settling lightly on her lap. It wasn't duty, it was instinct. Family recognized family, even shattered ones. Ethan struck a match. It flared bright, almost violent in the dark, then settled into a soft, defiant flame as he fed it to the firewood in the stone hearth. Soon, orange light licked shadows off the walls, warming nothing, yet promising everything. He stoked the fire until sweat purled at his temple, his chest heaving with the rhythm of a man refusing to lose another life. He found a heavy wool blanket, navy, military issue, and wrapped it around the girl, tucking it snug at her neck. Her eyelids fluttered, but she did not wake. His throat tightened. Sleep like this on the on the edge between worlds, that was a battlefield he knew too well. He crouched and whispered, voice gentler than his reputation ever allowed. "You're safe now. Stay with me." A rattle on the window drew his eye. A shadow moved outside, impossible to see clearly through the snow-caked glass. A branch? The wind? Or something else watching? Valor's ears twitched, one rising, one angling backward. A rumble rolled in his chest but faded when nothing approached. Ethan inhaled, long and tense, forcing the soldier inside him to stand down. Ghosts of danger love to visit men like him. He turned to the small kitchen, metal pans hanging like quiet soldiers awaiting orders. He checked the propane stove, old but loyal, and lit a flame beneath a dented kettle. Water hissed, steam lifted. His reflection in the window over the sink was a stranger. Eyes too tired, jaw clenched like stone, dark circles hollowing the face of a man who hadn't rested in years. He reached for a photo frame on the shelf. A woman with gentle eyes the color of spring lakes, auburn hair falling loose around a soft smile. Beside her, a little boy, perhaps 4, bright-eyed, holding a toy airplane. His fingers traced their faces, a life burned out too soon, casualties not of war but of a world that does not spare even the brave. It had been pneumonia and a winter storm that time too. He hadn't made it home in time. Grief crept up his spine like frost climbing glass. He pressed the frame gently back and whispered something only the fire heard. Behind him, a faint whimper. The girl's breathing quickened, brows knitting, as though nightmares chased her even in unconsciousness. Ethan kneeled again, brushing damp strands of hair from her forehead. "Easy," he murmured. "Nobody's gonna hurt you." The words felt unfamiliar on his tongue, rusty like an old rifle pulled from storage. He wasn't sure she was the one who needed to hear them. The kettle whistled low. He poured warm water into a mug, dipped a cloth, and dabbed her cheeks and hands, coaxing life back to her skin. Tiny fingers twitched. For a moment, she gripped his thumb. Fragile, needy, trusting without meaning to. Ethan froze, a quiet ache blooming under his ribs. Valor rose and circled once before lying across Ethan's boot, body pressed against him like a quiet oath. His tail tapped once, a reassurance, or a reminder. You're not alone either. A crunch sounded outside in the snow, soft but definite. Ethan's head snapped toward the door. Valor stood instantly, posture rigid, growl lodged low behind his teeth. Something or someone lurked out there, but the sound faded, swallowed by the wind. Ethan's instincts flared, the special forces part of him sharpening like a blade. Was it wildlife? A person? Whoever called in the storm earlier? He reached silently into a wooden trunk near the fireplace and pulled out a matte black pistol, checking the magazine with practiced ease. Loaded, clean, ready. He set it beside him, invisible to a child but near enough to his hand to feel safe again, or as safe as men like him ever felt. Minutes passed. The wind screamed. The cabin's logs popped as they warmed. Slowly, tension bled from his shoulders. Valor lowered his head again, though one ear stayed raised like a sentry. Ethan leaned back against the couch, exhaustion tugging at him. The girl, tiny and bundled in the blanket, breathed more steadily now. Her tiny chest rose and fell. She was not out of danger, but she fought. Strong little thing, strong enough to be alive when she shouldn't be. For the first time in years, Ethan let his guard slip, just a fraction. His eyes closed. Hours bled into minutes or minutes into hours. Time softened around the fire's glow. His thoughts drifted, not to war for once, but to dark hair, small hands, a future that dared to whisper possibility. Then a soft sound, like a breath, like a sigh. The girl's voice, fragile as snowflake wings, stirred the big silence. Not a word, only a sound. But it was enough to pierce him. Ethan opened his eyes. Valor lifted his head, nose pressed to the child's arm. The storm howled on outside, but inside the cabin, the fire finally claimed the room, warmth rolling slow and deep, thawing not just limbs, but something buried deeper in Ethan's chest. He spoke again, barely above a whisper, but firm now with something close to conviction. "I'll keep you safe." The girl didn't wake, but her fingers held his thumb a little tighter. Outside, snow hammered the earth, relentless. Something in the dark moved again, farther this time, but real. Watching, searching. And Ethan knew the storm outside was not the only storm coming. Morning crawled into existence slowly, brushing pale gold across the snow like the world hesitated to wake from a nightmare. Ethan had dozed in a chair beside the couch, but his eyes opened the instant the storm's howl softened. Valor rose first, stretching, tail flicking once. Mission not over. The child lay curled in the blanket, color returning to her cheeks, her breathing steady now, though shadows still clung to her small face like memories refusing to let go. Ethan washed and dressed in silence, wearing a weather-worn flannel and a thick coat with faded military patches. He strapped a sidearm to his thigh, not paranoia, survival. The world had taught him what came when you didn't prepare. When the girl finally stirred, she blinked slowly, confusion flickering through her eyes like she was rising from underwater. She looked at Ethan, then Valor, then around the cabin. For a moment, fear flashed, a small spark. But then Valor rested his snout beside her hand, warm and steady. Her shoulders eased. "You're safe," Ethan said, voice low, gentle but firm as gravel. "I need to take you to town. Doctors should check you, and there are things that need to be reported." Her lips moved. A hoarse whisper slipped out. "Lila." A name, fragile as glass. Ethan nodded. "Lila," he repeated, committing it to his bones. A name meant life, identity, belonging. "We'll keep you safe, Lila." Lila held her rabbit tighter. Valor wagged his tail once, as if accepting her introduction. Ethan helped her into a coat far too big, but she didn't complain, only clung to the plush toy as if it anchored her to reality. The drive to Red Hollow wound through forests dusted white. Lila stared out the window, wide-eyed, absorbing every tree, every roof, as though the world outside the storm seemed unbelievable. She didn't speak, but occasionally her small hand drifted to Valor's fur in reassurance, or perhaps to reassure herself. Ethan drove in silence, focused, jaw set. Not cold toward her, but protective, scanning the woods for dangers only a soldier would imagine. Red Hollow appeared from the snow like a forgotten postcard town. Wooden storefronts, a faded flag flapping, pickup trucks lining the street. People paused to stare. Ethan Cole rarely came to town, and when he did, isolation clung to him like a cloak. But today he stepped out holding a child, and curiosity sharpened like knives. A tall, broad-chested officer approached, Deputy Russell Moore. Early 40s, sandy blonde hair buzzed short, jaw square and dotted with rough stubble. His winter coat stretched across a frame built from years on ranch land, not Jim's. He had pale blue eyes, cautious, but not hostile. Once he and Ethan had nearly been friends. They had served in the same National Guard unit briefly before Ethan joined Special Forces. But tragedies and silence had grown between them, and Russell had learned not to ask a man drowning why he didn't shout for help. "Ethan," Russell greeted, tone tight. "Heard the storm tore through hard. You all right?" Ethan nodded once. Simple. "Found her." He motioned to Lila. "Car wreck 10 miles out. Parents didn't make it." Russell's face softened, lines around his brow pulling. He crouched slightly to Lila's eye level. Not too close, respectful. "Hey there, sweetheart. You safe with this guy?" Lila pressed closer to Ethan's coat but nodded once, eyes too old for her years. Russell's jaw flexed. "All right, let's get Doc Lane." Dr. Eleanor Lane arrived from the clinic next door. She was in her late 50s, silver bob-cut hair tucked behind ears, glasses perched low. Her expression was sharp but kind, her build slender but steady like someone who grew up baling hay but now carried stethoscopes instead of farm tools. She wore a wool coat over scrubs and had the gentle but commanding air of someone who had seen every sort of pain pass through her doors. "Come, little one," she murmured, holding out a hand. Lila hesitated until Valor lightly nudged her. She stepped forward. Inside the clinic, Eleanor checked the girl gently, pulse, temperature, reflexes, her hands warm, practiced. "She's dehydrated, cold-stressed, but strong. Lucky, truly," Eleanor said, eyes flicking to Ethan with unspoken understanding. Someone was watching her. Ethan did not reply. He simply placed a hand on Valor's head. While Eleanor fetched warm soup, a man stepped into the doorway, Harold Dunn, the town clerk. Short and round-shouldered, with a thin mustache and a constantly worried expression, his glasses fogged from the cold. His voice trembled slightly whenever responsibility loomed. "Ethan? Sheriff Haynes wants you to report the crash. Paperwork." His tone implied fear, not of Ethan, but of mishandling a delicate situation. Ethan nodded curtly and followed Russell. The sheriff's office smelled faintly of coffee and wood polish. Sheriff Clint Haynes, a graying man in his 50s with a strong frame softened just a touch by age, sat behind a desk cluttered with old reports. His clean-shaven face, square jaw, and steady, steel-colored eyes gave him the air of a man who never rushed judgment, but never ignored danger. A horizontal scar cut above his brow, rumored from an ATV crash when he was younger and wilder, before duty mellowed him. "Cole," he greeted, voice low. "Heard you brought in a child." Ethan stood straight. "Yes, SUV, Storm got them." Clint leaned back, studying him. "We'll do right by her." A beat. Then the office door opened. A stranger stepped inside. Tall, slim, mid-30s, expensive cashmere coat, slick dark hair parted meticulously, leather gloves even indoors. His posture was rehearsed arrogance, his gray eyes calculating. "I heard," he said smoothly, voice silk over steel. "My niece survived." Ethan's muscles tightened. Valor growled, low, a vibration like a warning shot. The man introduced himself with an oily politeness. "Marcus Hale." The name tasted sour. "Her mother was my sister. I've been searching." His tone dripped sympathy, but his gaze flicked to the sheriff, then to Ethan, then to the papers on the desk, as though assessing leverage, not loss. A gold watch glinted at his wrist, too polished, too eager. "Where were you yesterday?" Ethan asked, voice ice. Marcus smiled, but no warmth reached his eyes. "Travel delays, weather." Liar, Ethan thought. Lila appeared in the doorway with Eleanor behind her. The moment Marcus looked at her, too intensely, too claiming, Lila recoiled. She darted behind Ethan's leg, hands gripping fabric, knuckles white. Valor stepped forward, chest rumbling, tail stiff, not threat, but promise. Marcus's smile thinned. "Come here, Lila. We're family." Lila shook her head, whisper barely audible but full of terror and truth. "Don't let him take me." Ethan crouched beside her. "You're safe." He said it steady like an oath. As her fingers tightened around his coat, the sheriff saw everything that mattered. Outside, the storm clouds gathered again. Shadows stretched long through the frost-fogged window, and Ethan knew this was no coincidence. Something darker than weather had arrived in Red Hollow. The courthouse in Red Hollow was more chapel than courtroom, a wooden hall with worn, pew-like benches, sunlight struggling through frosted windows as if even the sky hesitated to witness what would unfold. The room smelled faintly of old varnish and wood smoke, the kind of scent carried by a place that had seen more weddings and church suppers than legal battles. Yet today, every seat was filled. Ranchers still wearing dusted boots and wool coats, storekeepers with aprons tucked away, mothers holding restless toddlers. The town had come not out of curiosity alone, but because something fragile and fierce hung in the air, an innocent child's fate. Ethan Cole stood at the front, no lawyer at his side. In a navy flannel and clean jeans, he carried himself like a man armored not in fabric, but in conviction. Rough beard trimmed neatly, shoulders squared, his presence quiet but unyielding. Valor lay beside him, alert but still, paws folded, amber eyes scanning the room like a guardian soldier awaiting orders. Lila sat in a chair beside Ethan, legs swinging nervously. She wore a soft sweater and jeans Dr. Lane had found for her, hair combed but still slightly wild, as though some part of her spirit refused to be tamed by trauma. She kept hold of a tiny stuffed rabbit with one missing ear, her battle scar of memory. The doors opened. Marcus Hale entered. Tall, polished, his coat charcoal wool, shoes gleaming, hair sculpted back as though vanity were armor. His sharp cheekbones and pointed nose gave him a fox-like elegance, though fox suggested cunning. Jackal felt closer. Beside him walked his attorney, Martin Greaves, a thin man in his 50s, spectacles perched on a long nose, balding pate shining under courthouse lights. He wore a charcoal suit with a red tie, posture stiff, jaw clenched like a man who preferred control and disliked this small town very much. Greaves was known across the state, ruthless in probate courts, brilliant in paperwork traps, feared by small judges and disliked by big ones. Marcus straightened his cufflinks and offered Ethan a smile, thin, triumphant, already tasting victory. Ethan returned nothing but ice. Judge Harold Whitmore entered next, a man in his mid-60s with steel-gray hair swept back from a weathered forehead, mustache trimmed neatly, spectacles low on his nose. He had a broad farmer's build softened only slightly by age, and a stern presence that said he had seen enough foolish men to recognize trouble from a mile away. His plaid shirt peeked out beneath the judicial robe, a nod to practicality over pomp. A solemn man, widowed young. He had raised 3 children alone on wages smaller than he deserved. Compassion was carved into his bones through survival, not sentiment. The gavel struck. Court in session. His voice rolled steady as Riverstone. State versus custody petition. Minor Lila Hale. Marcus's lawyer rose first. Greaves adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat. Your Honor, the facts are indisputable. My client, Mr. Marcus Hale, is the only living blood relative to the minor child. He has the financial means, the legal rights, and the family duty to assume custody. Marcus folded his hands theatrically, nodding along. Mr. Cole, Greaves continued, is a solitary individual with no biological connection to the child, no wife, no children, no experience raising them, a violent military history, no known support network. While we respect his service, he didn't. We cannot place a vulnerable child in the custody of a man with such an unpredictable past. Ethan's jaw tensed, but he remained silent. Valor's ears twitched, tail sweeping once. Lila shrank closer to Ethan. Greaves smiled like a man convinced he'd already won. Then came the witnesses. Mrs. Dawson walked first. Emma Dawson, the storekeeper widow, in her late 60s with steel blue eyes and silver hair in a low bun. She stood straight, thin but resilient, wearing a neat maroon cardigan and clean-pressed slacks. She had buried a husband and a son. Life had taught her mercy and spine. I've known Ethan Cole 10 years, she said. He is honest, hard-working. He saves quietly and gives quietly. He has already given this girl something that man, she pointed to Marcus without shame, has not. Safety. Dr. Eleanor Lane testified next, clipboard in hand, glasses perched, voice calm. The child arrived severely cold-stressed, underfed, emotionally traumatized. In my professional opinion, she feels safe with Mr. Cole. Removing her abruptly could cause psychological harm. She glanced at Marcus with something sharp in her eyes. A guardian is not only blood. A guardian is presence. Deputy Russell stepped forward, hands behind his back, boots planted wide, voice steady. Cole's history? Yeah, he's rough around the edges, earned in places softer men wouldn't survive, but he's honorable. I saw the child refuse to approach anyone but him. Kid knows where she belongs. Even Sheriff Haynes rose. Mr. Cole brought her in immediately, followed protocol, cooperated fully. That's more than can be said for someone who appears only after an inheritance rumor. His gaze cut Marcus like a blade. Marcus flushed, but smirked, masking anger behind arrogance. Money or not, she's family. Finally, Lila stood. Ethan crouched to steady her, but didn't speak for her. She looked small, frail, but with a flicker of steel forged by pain. He found me, she whispered. He kept me warm, and Valor kept the dark away. Valor lifted his head, tail thumping soft like punctuation. Lila swallowed. Tears shimmered but didn't fall. I choose Ethan and Valor. Silence held the room like a breath caught between worlds. Greaves sputtered. Your Honor, the child's testimony is emotional, not legal. Judge Whitmore lifted a hand. Sometimes, Counselor, emotion reveals truth law can't. See? He looked at Ethan, then at Lila. His stern gaze softened just slightly. Temporary custody to Mr. Cole. Adoption process to begin. Ethan exhaled slowly. Lila threw her arms around his neck. Valor barked once, deep and triumphant, tail sweeping strong. Marcus's mask cracked, smile fading, jaw tightening. He lowered his head, not in defeat but calculation. His eyes promised return. Then he turned sharply and stormed out, lawyer scrambling behind. The gavel struck again. This court stands with the child. A murmur of quiet applause spread. Ethan lifted Lila gently. Valor followed close, gaze fixed on the door Marcus had exited. Outside, snow had begun to fall again, soft now, not hostile, as though winter itself approved. Ethan stepped into the cold, holding Lila. Valor pressed against his leg. The town exhaled behind them, but while warmth bloomed in his chest, something darker stirred at the edge of his instincts. Protection wasn't over. Love had been declared, but war was coming. He whispered into Lila's hair, voice steady as snowfall. You have a home now. But far off, beyond the courthouse square, a black sedan idled, engine purring like a patient predator. Marcus sat inside, face carved with venom. The game wasn't finished. Fate rarely quits after one round. Ethan felt the wind shift and Valor's ears pricked. Good had won the day, but the night had yet to speak. Spring arrived shyly at Silver Pine, as if afraid winter might return and reclaim what little warmth dared show itself. The snow thinned, softening into patches of white that clung stubbornly to shaded corners, while streams awakened with quiet murmurs beneath melting ice. The cabin no longer felt like a refuge carved from grief. It breathed now, like walls once hardened by solitude had stretched to make room for laughter. Ethan woke earlier than usual, not because nightmares chased him from sleep, but because the small feet that skittered across the cabin floor were real. Lila's light steps, quick and quiet as a deer's, carried eagerness rather than fear. She darted past the window into the yard where the sky flushed gentle rose, Valor bounding behind her, ears perked, fur shimmering in dawn's light. Ethan stepped outside with a mug of coffee, the steam mingling with the crisp mountain air. He leaned on the porch railing, shoulders relaxed in a way they hadn't been in years. His hair had grown slightly longer, dark strands brushing his ears, beard trimmed but softer. The weight in his brown eyes had lightened, not gone but eased, like a pack finally set down after too many miles. He watched as Lila chased Valor, laughing breathlessly, boots too big thumping clumsily in mud and leftover frost. She wore a blue flannel shirt rolled at the sleeves, jeans, and a wool hat that kept sliding over her eyebrows. Clumsy but charming. There was more color to her cheeks now, and curiosity in her eyes. She still startled at sudden loud noises, still woke sometimes at night clutching the stuffed rabbit, breathing fast until Valor hopped onto her bed and anchored her with warmth. But she smiled more, and each smile felt like a victory against silence. "Slow down," Ethan called. "Mud's slick." Lila stopped only because Valor stopped, tongue hanging lazily. She ran back to the porch. "You promised you'd teach me to make a fire today. A real one." Ethan hid a smile behind his mug. "I did, but first, boots," he pointed. "Tied properly." Her shoulders drooped, dramatic and exaggerated. "Ugh, boots." He crouched, demonstrating. "Again. Someday you'll have to do this in a storm." She scrunched her nose. "Someday I'll have Velcro." He chuckled, quiet but real. "Velcro won't save you everywhere." Valor nudged her arm with his nose, making her giggle. They spent the morning at the fire pit. Ethan showed her how to stack kindling, strike flint, coax flame like it was something fragile and alive. She watched intensely, as though the tiny spark was magic. Her small fingers hesitated when it was her turn, but Ethan's hand hovered near, not touching, never forcing, only offering steady presence. When the flame caught, she gasped. "I did it!" Ethan nodded. "You did." He didn't say how her triumph warmed him more than the fire could. A pickup truck groaned up the drive, tires crunching. "Gravel." Lila tensed. Valor stiffened, tail going alert straight, stance shifting to guard. Ethan stood, instinct sharpening. He recognized the truck, rust-red and dented, with chrome mirrors dulled by years of mountain dust. Mrs. Clara Holloway stepped out, balancing a tin tray. She was in her late 50s, short and solid, with curly gray hair gathered under a knitted cap and cheeks that always looked wind-flushed. She ran the local bakery and had a habit of feeding everyone as if hunger were a moral failing she must correct. Today, she wore a thick sweater patterned with pine trees and flour dusting her sleeves. "Morning," she called, brought cinnamon rolls, figured the little one could use sweetness. Lila brightened immediately. Ethan gave a small nod of thanks. Gratitude didn't come easily, but warmth flickered in his eyes. Clara stepped closer, offering the tray. She met Lila's gaze, soft and patient. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm Clara. I make the cookies at town hall potlucks." Lila hid behind Ethan's leg at first, then peeked out. Clara didn't push. She simply set the tray on the porch and grinned. "And I baked extra for Valor. Don't tell the vet." Valor's ears perked at his name. Clara winked. Lila smiled shyly and whispered, "Thank you." Clara nodded, eyes gentle. "You're welcome." She looked to Ethan, voice low. "Court clerk called. Paperwork's nearly final. Just one more signature next week." A breath left Ethan's chest, slow and careful, like relief wrapped in vigilance. "Good." Clara touched his arm lightly. "You're doing right by her." He cleared his throat. "Trying. Trying is more than most." She gave a nod, then stepped back. I'll leave you 3B. Holler if you need anything. When she left, Lila tugged Ethan's sleeve. She's nice. She is. Ethan paused. Most people here are. Lila thought on that, then shook her head solemnly. But not all. Ethan's jaw hardened briefly before relaxing again. Not all, but enough. Lunch was stew and bread. Lila fed Valor scraps when she thought Ethan wasn't looking. Ethan pretended not to notice. He sat back and watched them, child and dog curled together on the rug as afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, turning dust motes into tiny drifting stars. Later, while stacking wood near the shed, Ethan heard the crunch of footsteps. A man emerged from the tree line, mid-40s, tall, lean, with a ranger's build and sun-streaked hair tied back. He wore a green forestry jacket and carried a clipboard. His name badge read Jonas Wilder. Jonas had a weathered face, tanned skin, and brown eyes alive with vigilance. A thin scar traced his jawline. Old accident chopping wood, rumor said. He nodded politely. Afternoon, Park Service, checking cabins for spring runoff warnings. His voice had the calm cadence of a man used to long silences in wilderness, but the moment his gaze swept the property, noting the child, the dog, Ethan's stance, he read the scene, as soldiers recognize soldiers even in strange clothing. Everything all right here? He asked, meaning far more than weather. Ethan measured him a beat before replying. Fine. Jonas held his eyes, then nodded once, accepting the truth between lines. If anything feels off, radio tower on Ridge Hill still works. Holler. Ethan gave the smallest nod. Respect, warning, shared understanding. Mountains kept secrets, but trouble traveled them too. As Jonas disappeared into the trees, Lila ran up to Ethan. Who is that? Just someone who keeps an eye on the woods, Ethan said. And on us? Ethan knelt. Maybe, but that's okay. Sometimes it's good to have people watching for danger. She looked at him thoughtfully. You do that too. He swallowed. I try. Evening came soft and golden. Lila sat beside him on the porch, head on his shoulder, Valor curled at their feet. Birds chirped like tiny bells. Somewhere far off, water flowed again. Can I call you Dad? Lila whispered. Ethan's breath hitched. He didn't answer with words. He simply pulled her close, pressing his chin to her hair, and in the hush of fading day, he murmured, Yeah, sweetheart, yeah. Valor rested his head on Ethan's boot, tail tapping twice, as if sealing the vow. The world quieted, and for the first time in years, peace felt not like a dream, but a place Ethan could stay. He didn't see the distant glint through the trees, didn't notice the quiet snap of a twig too distant for human ears, but Valor lifted his head, ears pricking, gaze narrowing toward the ridge. A car engine hummed faintly and faded. Winter had ended, but shadows had long memories. There are moments in life when we think everything has been taken from us, when loss feels final, when loneliness feels louder than breath, when we believe God has forgotten our name. But then, somewhere in the quiet of our despair, a miracle arrives. Sometimes it comes as a second chance. Sometimes it comes as a child who needs us as much as we need them. Sometimes it wears fur and stands guard in the night. God does not always answer prayers in thunder or blazing light. More often, he answers through the fragile warmth of a small hand reaching for ours, or through a loyal companion who refuses to leave our side, or through the courage to love again after the world has broken us. Ethan did not expect grace. Lila did not expect family. Valor did not expect another mission. Yet in each other, they found exactly what heaven intended. And maybe that is the greatest miracle of all. Not a gift given by blood, but a family chosen by God's quiet, steady hand. In your everyday life, look for those moments. The gentle ones, the unexpected ones. The people who show up when the world turns cold. The small miracles God sends to remind you, you are not alone. Hold on to them. Cherish them, and when you can, become that miracle for someone else. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to this channel so more people can feel the hope we build together through these stories. May God bless you, protect your home, soften your struggles, and remind you, just like Ethan, Lila, and Valor, that no matter how dark the storm, he always leaves a light on for those who keep walking. Amen.